Righto. So welcome to the masterclass this morning, or at least it's morning here in South Africa. I am Jackie Meyer and I am a burnout coach, which basically means that I help women who are suffering from burnout to recover, and not just to recover, but to actually thrive and live in their brilliance after burnout. So today we're going to just pop into a few bits and pieces of how to own your day. And this is a really important one because I don't know about you, but I often used to have that feeling that I would get to the end of the day and feel that my day had been completely hijacked from me and I wasn't actually sure what I had got done. So here are some tips and tricks and tools to help you to own that day again. So this is for you if you resonate with being burnt out, if you're struggling to juggle it all, so you kind of feel like you get to the end of the day and you still haven't done everything on that to-do list, but you are tired and don't know if you're ever going to get through it. If you have high expectations of what it is that you think you can do, so that to-do list is always longer than what you can get through. And also, of course, if you think that you may have a superwoman syndrome. And I'm sure I don't have to go into that. That pretty much explains itself. But I just wanted to say well done for giving yourself this time, for recognizing that maybe this is some of what you're struggling with, but giving yourself the time to come and listen to this talk, to listen to this masterclass, to get some tricks and tools and things to help you to be able to get through your day with joy and ease and glory. So a very quick introduction to myself. As I said, my name is Jackie Meyer. I'm a burnout coach for women. And my mission is to help women who are suffering from burnout recover and live in their brilliance. I have had my own personal journey with burnout and adrenal fatigue, and am now fully recovered from that. And through this experience and my training, this has become my mission and my way forward. So really wanting to help women not have to ever go through what I had to go through, which was absolutely awful. So very quickly, how do you know if you have got burnout? So I just want to take one step back here quickly and chat a bit about burnout itself. Oftentimes, burnout is referred to in just the work context. But I think we have to understand that it's actually so much more than that. We can be burnt out just because of life, because of how much we have on our plate. And so some of the symptoms of burnout are headaches, muscle tension, even sometimes leading to migraines, having trouble sleeping, even though you are insanely tired. You may even suffer from insomnia. I used to find that at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was then awake and then would battle to go back to sleep, and it didn't matter how tired I was. Feelings of being overwhelmed and feeling cynical, feeling frustrated and unfulfilled, being very irritable and losing your temper for the smallest thing. And of course, there's a difference here, obviously, to hormonal irritability and losing your temper. But because of what happens to you physically in burnout, often your hormones will be out of sync. And so this will happen even though it may not be in sync with your cycle. You are tired no matter how much rest you get. You have brain fog or forgetfulness. I experienced that quite a bit. I used to carry a notebook around with me everywhere I went so that I wouldn't forget things. It was the most awful feeling in the world. Or otherwise, I'd walk into a room at home and then not remember what it is that I was doing in that room and have to leave and backtrack and hope that something would give me a clue as to why I was there. You no longer look forward to the things that you used to enjoy. So spending time with loved ones, with friends, it suddenly becomes overwhelming. If you enjoyed running or going to the gym, and suddenly you're no longer looking forward to that because it actually just seems like another task to do. And then, of course, if you notice yourself complaining a lot. So these are just some of the signs of burnout. It's not necessarily all of them, but I would say that if you can tick 4 to 6 of those boxes or even more, then it's definitely something to investigate and to to find out some more, and just to give yourself a check-in and see if you maybe aren't suffering from burnout. So you'll see here I have this stat from the Harris poll saying that 63% of women feel that they have done an entire day's work before they even get to the office. We're going to get into that right now. So why is burnout so prevalent nowadays? And it really is. I have been having a lot of conversations with friends, with colleagues, obviously with clients, and it's actually frightening how many women are suffering from burnout or on the brink of burnout, and it actually freaks me out somewhat. So let us jump right into why it is that burnout is so prevalent. So unequal treatment in the workplace. This is nothing new. This is a long time thing. It is a struggle. There's a lot of women empowerment and women struggle groups who are trying to change this, but it is still happening today. There is unequal pay and unequal work opportunities in the workplace. Often women are given roles with no authority, which is very frustrating. And then, of course, there's the whole age-old thing that some jobs are just for women and some jobs are just for men. I personally used to work in a male-dominated corporate industry. They were pretty forward-thinking and proactive in their transformation in the workplace, but there was still definitely this underlying nuance about women who, women go off to have children, and then women have sick children, and so they can't be considered reliable, and therefore there were certain roles that were definitely preferred for men than for women. Then when it comes to the work-home balance, just like that stat before, 63% of women feel like they have done an entire day's work before they even get to the office. That's hectic. And that's because in many homes, there still exists a disparity of homemaking and child rearing chores. So often it is the woman who gets up first in the morning, who is rushing around, getting kids ready, packing lunch boxes, cleaning the house, doing all those, getting the washing in, doing all those sorts of chores before they even get to work. So you can understand how women feel like they've done an entire day's work before they've actually even got their bum into their work, into their office chair. And then, of course, societal pressure. So this is pressure from society in general, particularly from our parents, our elders, our friends. And this is all the pressure to be the perfect mom, the perfect working mom, to have the perfect figure, and basically just to have all your shit together. And what happens with the societal pressure is that we end up taking that all on ourselves. And so we end up adding to that by putting our own pressure on this too, of what it is that we think is the idea of the perfect mom or the perfect working mom or whatever the case is. And then, of course, neurological wiring. And this literally is how we as individuals are wired to react in situations. It's our innate characteristics and personalities, it's our values and belief systems, and it's often based on experience or what we've been told. But this is also the exciting one, because this is where we actually have some control. So unlike unequal treatment in the workplace, the home-work balance and societal pressure, we don't have as much control in those areas as what we do in our neurological wiring. And so a lot of my training, my coaching has to do with that neurological wiring. And it definitely does ripple into the others. But if this is where the focus is, this is where we can make the big changes. And we have this ability with this neurological wiring because of this wonderful thing called neuroplasticity. So very quickly, I'm going to nerd out on you guys and explain to you what is neuroplasticity and why I get so excited about it. So our brains are incredible. They're amazing. And very simply, neuroplasticity is the ability of our brain to be rewired. So I'm sure you would have heard of incidences of people who have been in accidents and have been told they'll never be able to walk again, they'll never be able to talk again. And through sheer determination and obviously therapy and wonderful support, they are actually able to overcome that and able to walk again or talk again or whatever it is that was given to, whatever prognosis was given to them. And that is simply our brains finding a new neural pathway to do something. So I like this analogy here that I have showed you where you've got the two roads. So if you've got the beautiful open tarred road, and obviously getting from point A to point B along that road is easy and comfortable and pretty obvious. And that is kind of how our current neural pathways look. They're our go-to, that's our default, that's where we go to all the time. Whereas if you have a look in the pathway through the trees on the right, you will see that that path is not as obvious, it's not as comfortable, it's obviously a little bit harder. And what happens with neuroplasticity is that to find new neural pathways, it is hard to start with. And that's why learning new habits is so difficult, or breaking old habits is so difficult, because we want to always go back to our default. But if we persist, we can eventually make that path through the trees that we can see on the right become like the one on the left, so that we completely rewire our brain so that we have a new neural pathway. And this is how we can change so much things that we have in our life. So what can we do about burnout? In this masterclass, I'm going to cover 8 themes on the road from burnout to brilliance. There's obviously so much more, but we have got limited time. And so that is why we're just going to cover these ones. Number 1 is owning your diary. Number 2, creating routines. Number 3, habits. Number 4, saying no. Number 5, boundaries. Number 6, tapping into your intuition. 7, auditing that to-do list. And 8, the art of kindness. So there is obviously some overlap with them, but let's jump on into them right away. So, owning your diary. This is a pretty easy and straightforward one, or at least I like to think it is. Whether you have a digital diary or an old school diary, I still have an old school diary. I like to have pen and paper. You need to put everything into your diary, everything. I am always working ahead and adding bits and pieces into my diary as I go, always working forward, planning forward. So you need to especially put your stuff in your diary. So whether it is gym, yoga, art class, going for a walk with a friend, going horse riding, whatever it is, you need to put your stuff in your diary first. You put them in and you make hard limits around them. And you'll be surprised, but everyone does fit in. This is one that I've actually loved this year. So I put in my yoga classes, I put in my time at the gym with my personal trainer, and of course I also teach yoga. So all of that stuff are hard limits that I put into my diary. And I just, whenever anyone wants to book an appointment or wants to have a meeting or something, I just say to them, like, I'm sorry, these are the times I have available. You can fit in with that, and that's fantastic. But these other things, I already have a prior appointment. They don't need to know what it is. They really don't. And you'll be amazed at how people will actually fit in around it, especially if you just put those hard limits in place. And then, of course, factoring travel times and meals. So this is one that when I was first discovering how to use my diary as efficiently as possible, is something that I would often not factor in, and then get to the end of the day feeling quite frustrated and frazzled, often having missed lunch. And it's because I didn't factor in sufficient time for travel and for meals, etc. So definitely always include those sorts of things. Then, of course, switching across to phones. We have these wonderful things called phones that we take with us all over. And what happens is that we have notifications on for Facebook, for Instagram, for WhatsApp, for email. And of course, the phone is always going bing, 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 and causing us distraction. So I highly recommend that you switch off all of the notifications on your phone and you schedule time in your day to check in with these. And then, of course, when you're busy doing a very important task, something that you really need to focus on, I would even go so far as to say, mute your phone or put it onto flight mode. That way, you know you're not going to be distracted. You're going to be able to focus, you're going to be able to get your task done, and you're going to get it done in the time that you have allocated to it. Righto. Routines. So routines are often seen as dull and boring, but actually they're not. If you create routines that work for you, you will be much more organized, which means you will be less stressed. And particularly if you have routines in the morning and the evenings. Now, if you think of routines as being something as simple as brushing your teeth, that's something that we do every morning and every evening without even thinking about it. And that's just because it's become a routine. So why can't we take that routine and expand it just a little bit more? So one of the really amazing things with routines is that they make us much more efficient. It also means that we have less need to plan. It creates structure in our day. And what this means is that it saves us time and reduces our stress. When we need to make any decisions, we incur a level of stress. But if we have a routine in place and an effective routine, we have less decisions that we need to make, which means that we have less stress. Having really good routines also saves us time. Believe it or not, it saves us money. And it can actually help us instill good habits through the repetition, because that's what routine is. It's repetition. It also helps us to prioritize. So that's really great. It reduces our level of procrastination because, of course, with it being a routine, it's just something that we're physically doing all the time. So you can start your day out right by having a good morning routine. It'll help you to make bigger decisions because now you will not have decision fatigue. It'll help you to sleep better. And of course, will create more time in your life. So routines are really, really great. I find that the best way to put together a routine is to write down everything that you need to do. Then work through the tasks and see what you can delegate and eliminate. Then have a look at what sort of tasks you can lump together. So for example, if you're busy making breakfast, why can't you? You're in the kitchen anyway, you're going to be in and out of the fridge and the pantry. So make your lunchbox at the same time. So lumping similar routines all together, just like you would in the morning, washing face, brushing teeth, everything that you do in the bathroom, you'll do all at the same time. So lumping similar tasks together. And this is the best way for you to create routines. And it's going to take a little bit of effort, but if you work on it and you start to work through it and then go through and reflect on what has worked and what hasn't worked, you can then change the structure of the routine and make it work for you. So just to share, one of the routines that we have in our house is that at dinner, when I'm busy making supper for the family, the kids will come into the kitchen and they actually pack their own lunch boxes. So I get to be there to watch and oversee just to make sure the lunch boxes are healthy and sufficient. But they come in and they do that. So we're all in the kitchen all at the same time. I'm busy doing one thing, they're busy doing another thing, but we can chat while we're doing it. We can listen to music or podcast while we're doing that. And it helps because I have delegated one task to the children. So they now know that that's their task and it's become routine for them. And we get to chat and have a bit of quality time at the same time. So it definitely does help when you create these routines and when you can delegate tasks too. Right, habits. The good, the bad, the ugly. So the reason why I've said the good, the bad, and the ugly is because sometimes we can have good habits which turn bad and ugly. And sometimes also the idea of a good habit or a bad habit is just really a point of view. So I'm going to give the example of perfectionism. We often have the idea that perfectionism is a good habit because we like things to be perfect. But on the flip side, it can actually be a really bad habit. as a recovering perfectionist, I can allude to this one, because the perfectionism can actually put you in a place of overwhelm and anxiety if it becomes too much. So that's why habits, I don't like to say, are either good or bad. It's obviously how you manage them and how they help you. So I was listening to a really awesome podcast the other day about habits, and particularly about bad habits. So there will be a cue or a trigger, a stressor, which then we respond to. And there are four types of bad habits that we will use to respond. And of course, these responses being repeated becomes the bad habit. So it becomes a bad habit because we get a payoff out of it. But eventually it does steal away our joy. So the 4 types of bad habits are, number 1, the desire to protect ourselves. So often we will avoid something, or I suppose avoid something is the best thing because we're trying to protect ourselves. Our human brain does not like change. And so procrastination is probably a really good example there. We use procrastination to protect ourselves because our brains don't inherently like change. So maybe there's a new project or a deadline that we need to meet, which means that we're going to have to get out of our comfort zone to get the task completed. And instead we fall to procrastination to protect ourselves so we don't have to put that pressure on ourselves. The second one is to pacify negative feelings or to soothe negative feelings. So a really good example of this one is eating. Often a lot of people will have a food type that they will go to, which they will use to pacify themselves. I know I have is a beautiful coffee shop that I frequently go to for my caffeine fix, and they have the most amazing carrot cake. And I know that I used to definitely pacify my negative feelings with carrot cake, particularly if I was angry or frustrated. So we often would use bad habits to pacify negative feelings. On the flip side, the third type of bad habit is to pacify somebody else or to calm them. So we don't do things because we don't want to upset a situation. We don't want to upset the status quo. And so by not doing things, we're obviously also creating bad habits. And then, of course, the fourth one is proving ourselves. So we will do things to prove ourselves, to make sure that people realize that we are there and that we're important, and maybe even that bit of ego in there that we're better than somebody else. So the first step, of course, to breaking bad habits is the awareness of those bad habits. And awareness is always a good thing. So we have an awareness of the habit, which we all generally do know what our bad habits are. Maybe then putting them into one of those 4 boxes. Is it the desire to protect ourselves? Is it the need to pacify our negative feelings? Is it the need to pacify somebody else and keep the status quo? Or is it a case of proving ourselves? What is the trigger for these bad habits? And then, of course, rehearsing overcoming those bad habits. So in this podcast, the example was of pacifying negative feelings with food. And it was a case of like, actually, you know what, you can't hide your negative feelings. So what is the best thing to do maybe in that situation is to find your journal and put it next to, for example, the cake. And instead of eating the cake, journaling about what it is that is coming up, journaling about those feelings. And the thing is that the more often you do that, the payoff then becomes actually your brain registers that it feels good after journaling, and it actually feels better after journaling than what it does after eating the cake. And so with time and rehearsing overcoming that bad habit, you will automatically, well, you won't automatically, but you will start to find yourself questioning yourself before you actually reach for the cake. Right, so enough about overcoming bad habits. What about some good habits? So here are some of my favorite habits good ones that I think are good. And you'll see I have left space at the bottom of the page intentionally because this isn't all of them. But these are just some that I like to instill. So gratitude, number one, being one of my favorite good habits. It has the most amazing benefits. You can do it in the morning, in the evening. It has amazing beneficial results. And of course, it's for free. Number two, being meditation. It is also amazing, and there are so many benefits. I'm not going to even go into them because you can always Google those. And if you struggle with meditation, there are some amazing apps that can help you as well. Number three is journaling. I have several journals that I have with me everywhere I go, and I use them for different things. So often I will use them in conjunction with the gratitude and the meditation. And sometimes I use them like with the bad habits in helping to overcome those bad habits. Number four is exercise. And I don't want to say exercise, I actually just prefer movement. So finding what movement works best for your body. Movement is really good for us. And whether it is walking, dancing, horse riding, yoga, running, going to gym, you just need to go through all of the types of body movement and find what it is that your body is happy with and what brings you happiness, what brings you joy, because you don't want it to be a chore. It has to be something that you look forward to and that you love. Food being the next one. The next good habit is just eating healthily and nourishing your body. And again, here, I'm not going to advocate any particular type of diet. We all have different bodies, and I think we need to all find the eating habits that work for us or the diet that works for us. So I think that's something that requires spending a little bit of time on to find what it is that works really, really well with your body. Water is an obvious one. The other day I had a really busy day. I had several back-to-back meetings, and I actually found when I then sat down to do some work, I was really struggling to work. And part of that reason was because I hadn't actually drunk enough water. And so my brain was literally not working properly. Our bodies are made up of 75% of water, and we need to make sure that we hydrate ourselves properly for optimal functioning. Number 7 is mindfulness here. So mindfulness, that's a whole thing that we could also go into, but I'm not going to here. I'm just going to touch on it. Mindfulness is that ability to be present, completely present at any moment in time. So not living in fear or worry and living in the past or the future about the what ifs or the I should haves, but rather being completely present right here, right now. And that is the most amazing gift that you can give to anybody. And then number 8 is mindset. So this is also a whole other subject that we could spend lots of time in. But realizing that mindset is generally they consider it either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset where you're very stuck in your ways, or a growth mindset where you're open to learning new stuff, learning new points of view, learning new information. And I kind of, through my work, have found that people are neither really one or the other, but have a bit of both. And you may have a fixed mindset in certain areas of your life and a growth mindset in others. But the good news is that in those places where you have got a fixed mindset, it actually is, you are able to change that. So the other thing I just want to say about habits before we move on is that I always find that the best thing to do with changing habits is to start small, to, as I say, eat the proverbial elephant one bite at a time. And that's because if you try and do too many habits at once, you're going to feel overwhelmed and anxious, and then you will give up because it is actually too much. So I always recommend that if you're going to do something, take one habit that's easy to implement. For example, the practice of gratitude. You run with that for a couple of weeks, see how it works. Once it becomes habit, becomes part of your routine, then picking up the next one and adding that one in. Right. Moving on to learning to say no. This one is hard. It is very hard. we have a lot of people around us who expect a lot of things from us. And as part of that societal pressure, we often feel that we can't say no. And the first step to learning to say no is to find out if you are a people pleaser, if you are afraid of missing out, if you are the overachiever, or if you're just a pushover. Now, none of us wants to admit to being any of these, but once you have gone through this and you have spent a little bit of time reflecting on it, you may find that one of these is particularly strong, or even two. So me personally, I am a people-pleasing overachiever. Or should I say, I am a recovering people-pleasing overachiever. And so I don't like saying no to people, the people-pleasing, and I will often take on more than I can do in an effort to prove my worth, hence the overachiever. I've got a friend who is, she really struggles with saying no because she's always afraid of missing out. She suffers from serious FOMO. She's always worrying that whatever she has said no to will be better than what she's doing at that moment. And we'll chat about that in intuition, because that's going to pop up there too. But like I say, this is the first step to learning to say no, is to identify which of these four you are, or of course, if you are more than one. We can't spend too much time on this either, unfortunately, but it is something that I do in my coaching, is that we really deep dive into this so you can discover which of these you are, or which hybrid you are, and then of course taking that the step further to learn to say no. So the next thing about learning to say no is that it's easier to start off with your colleagues and use them as your practice run. When you have got it right with your colleagues and associates, or have gotten better and stronger, then ramp up to learning to say no to your friends. And then when you're feeling more comfortable, then learning to say no to your family, because often our family are the ones that we really struggle to say no to. So use your colleagues and your friends as the practice run, and then slowly work your confidence up before you try it out on the family. For me, the one thing that was a huge game changer about saying no is that it's okay to say no to others so that you can say yes to yourself. That was huge for me. I think that was probably one of the most pivotal things, when I realized that by saying no to others, I was saying yes to me, helped me to say no more often. Right, boundaries. So saying no and boundaries obviously overlap quite a bit. So that's why I didn't spend too much time on saying no. We're going to jump into boundaries. So what are boundaries? Boundaries are those rules, those limits, those hard limits I was talking about, that a person creates to help them feel safe. And it gives other people permissible ways on how to behave towards you. And they're built out of a mix of conclusions, beliefs, opinions, attitudes, past experiences, social learning, both ours and what we have been told. And boundaries, we'll have different boundaries with different people, and we'll have different boundaries in different places. What the boundaries basically do is teach other people how you want to be treated. So by us instilling those boundaries, we teach other people how to treat us. And this way we can ensure that relationships are mutually respectful, they are appropriate, and that they're caring. And this is why you'll have different types of boundaries in different scenarios. When you first set boundaries, you are probably going to expect some negative responses and reactions, some of which will be guilt and shame. And these are just things that we need to just keep reminding yourself that you need to set those boundaries. So how do we set boundaries? Here we go. So setting healthy boundaries. First off, we need to identify the desired boundary. So one of my current clients at the moment has decided that one of her boundaries is that she needs to spend more time on herself. She has a very demanding family. She's got 3 young boys. And so a lot of her time and effort has been spent lately with her children, but now they're getting older and don't need her as much. And so she is starting, so her personal boundary at the moment is all about her own quality time for herself. So once you've identified that boundary, then communicating what it is that you need. And the thing with the communication is that it actually needs to be clear and precise. So you need to spend a little bit of time thinking about it. So in the case of my clients, she has shared with her family and her extended family that she would appreciate some assistance with the children, and so that she can go and spend some time by herself for herself, doing things that she needs for her soul. And then keep it simple as possible. You don't need to over explain. And the reason why I say this is because often people will simply accept what it is you say, and you don't have to go into long things. The long explanation is more for you, and that is a lot of your guilt that's coming up rather than what the other person needs. So again, in this example of my client at the moment, she very simply told everybody that this is what she needed. Everyone was quite happy and jumped on board, and there's been no issues. Whereas if she had over-explained and told everybody, it would have become complicated. They may not have understood why, and it actually might have ended up blurring that boundary. And then, of course, the consequences. So saying why it is important. And again, you don't need to over-explain here. In the case of my clients, she's just told everybody that she's done her bit. Her kids are now older, and she now needs some more time to herself. So can everyone please help her with that? She didn't need to go into the fact that it was more for her mental wellness and her recovery to burnout. It was short, sweet, and simple, and everyone understood. And the thing with creating those healthy boundaries is that it's a whole lot easier if we do have support. So finding everybody who can support you in not only creating the healthy boundaries, but keeping them in place. So it's often good to have like an accountability buddy, a good friend, a family member, somebody who can help you. So having good boundaries helps us have good mental health, good emotional health. It helps us to develop autonomy and identity. It helps us avoid burnout, and it influences how others behave. It can also reduce your stress, your financial burdens, time, gives you more time, helps you in relationships, and just helps overall with mental distress. So it is a hard one, but it is something that you can really reap wonderful rewards from. Right, tapping into your intuition. So what is your intuition? Women have an amazingly strong intuition, but because of society and because of how we've been brought up, that intuition has often been squashed. Intuition is that gut instinct. It's that innate knowing. So you will be in a situation and you just know something is about to happen. I'm sure you've all experienced this, that sometimes something just happens. You're like, oh, like, wow, I knew that was going to happen. And that is that intuition. And you can often actually feel it in your body, which is why it is called a gut instinct. And for me, this intuition is such an amazing gift. It is our innate knowing, our innate universal wisdom, that connection with the universal wisdom that we can tap into. And it is a muscle. So the more that we use it, the easier it is to use, the stronger it becomes. And when you start to use it and start to tap into it and play with it, it's amazing what comes up. So I just want to very, very quickly touch on two beautiful ways to tap into your intuition. And the first one is a heart meditation. Very simply, what you do is you find a nice, beautiful, quiet, sacred space. It can be out in the garden. It can be somewhere lovely in your home. Spend a few minutes just gently connecting to your breath, connecting to your body. And then put your hands over your heart and just ask your heart for a yes. And you will physically feel your body saying yes. Then asking your heart for a no. And notice the difference, because you will physically feel in your body, your heart saying no. And then being able to use that yes or no in life to make decisions. The other one, which is actually quite similar, is it light or heavy? So being in a situation and having to make a choice and just taking a beautiful deep breath, taking a moment to like, is this light or heavy? If it's light, then yay, it's the right choice. And if it's heavy, then oh dear, no, it's the wrong choice. So two very simple tools. And if you want more information on those, please, please, please pop me a message and I will send those to you because they are fabulous, fabulous tools. We're just going to have to move on because we are running out of time. Right, auditing your to-do list. So this is one of my favorites. At the beginning of every year, I set my goals for the year. And of course, my priorities are in line with those goals. Always make sure that you don't overwhelm yourself. So you don't want more than 3 to 5 priorities. I then take those priorities and I place them somewhere where I can see them. So they're generally in the front of my diary because I have my diary everywhere I go. And then you can double check that is your to-do list actually in line with your priorities? So if you've got those priorities in the front of your diary and you have a look at your to-do list, you can actually go through and have a look. And I did this exercise a couple of years ago where I'd fallen off the rails somewhat. And when I had a look at my to-do list, there was hardly anything that was in line with my priorities. And it was such a wake-up call because it actually gave me the opportunity then to delegate and delete a whole lot of the items on the to-do list. So I love this. It's probably my time spent in the corporate world, but I find this tool really amazing and helpful. So you will see here, you can take your to-do list and you can go and you can prioritize it. So is a task important and urgent? Yes, it is. Do it now. Is the task urgent and not important for me? So this is the difference between important for somebody else and important for you. So if the task is not important for you, but it is urgent, can you possibly delegate that task? And then again, if the task is important for you, but not urgent, then schedule the time to do it. So take out the diary and put it in the diary to do. Then, of course, tasks that are not important for you and not urgent, you can completely delete. And these are just some examples here. And of course, there's so many more. And what you may also find is that you may have a task that is sitting here in the yellow for the decide, and next week it shifts up into the urgent. And that is, so I actually even still use these color coding as well because I find that it helps me out a lot. And sometimes a task on your to-do list may not be important or urgent to you, but it will bring you joy. And these are the things that you also want to put into your diary. So like I said, I like this tool. I think it's really, really great. It helps me just to audit that to-do list and to prioritize everything. And there's also nothing wrong with doing jobs, having stuff on your to-do list that isn't urgent or important, but just gives you joy. In fact, I think it is very important that we have stuff on our to-do list that brings us joy. And then last but not least, practicing self-kindness. So I am a huge, huge advocate of self-kindness and practicing kindness to yourself. And I love this little picture of this little girl who's giving herself the biggest hug, and look at how happy she is. It's like, that's exactly what self-kindness should look and feel like. So just two memes here with a couple of ideas. You'll see there already some of the stuff we've covered, like the saying no to commitments, cutting down that to-do list, spending time in toxic environments, breathing deeply, loving yourself. These are all really, really great. A few others that I'd like to add in there is asking for help. So we tend to be very fiercely independent nowadays, also part of societal pressure. And we need to realize that there's a time and a place to ask for help. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Also, identifying stresses. So what are those things that give us stress, cause stress in our life? Can we delete them from our life? Can we delegate them to somebody else? Or again, can we ask for help? Forgiving yourself is a really important Another act of self-kindness. We're all human. We're all here having a human experience, and we will all fail sometimes, and we will all do things that we regret. But how quickly we forgive ourselves for that depends on how quickly we will come out of stress. And then, of course, fear, overcoming fear, recognizing your fears, facing your fears, and overcoming them. And all of this is stuff that I also go into much deeper into the coaching. But of course, like I say, we are limited for time. So practicing self-kindness. Self-kindness is also an interesting one because often our love language can actually influence what type of self-kindness is the best for us. So also an interesting one to have a look at and reflect on. Right. So I want to say thank you very much. And I want to ask you how I can serve you. And we're going to get to some Q&A, but I just want to quickly share my coaching program with you. So I have alluded to it in a few places. We have obviously got limited time on this masterclass, and we go into everything and so much more, so much deeper in the group program. So the Burnout to Brilliance group program is a 6-month program where we deep dive into the recovery with tools for you to implement and use for life. I like to think of it as like a little toolbox that you can carry around. And obviously, the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more prepared you are to face the world. There will be access to a library of videos, worksheets, interviews, and so much more. It is amazing. There will be a private Facebook group. So there is continuous support through the Facebook group. It is for members only. Also, just to let you know that the group program only ever has 6 to 10 people in at a time, because burnout is such a personal thing. I like to keep the groups smaller so they're intimate, so it's a nice, safe space. As part of the Burnout program, you also get weekly meetings where we discuss a topic in depth and we check in with everybody to see how everyone's doing. We also learn and grow from each other, which is really, really great. And then through the Facebook group, you also get weekly tools such as weekly meditations, affirmations, journal prompts, and so much else that is all available in that group. So usually the price of the 6-month program is just short of $6,000. But because you have joined me on this program, I'm going to give it to you for just short of $3,000, so $2,997. There is also a payment plan, which I know is obviously a whole lot easier for a lot of people's pockets. So that is available. So question and answers, how can I help you? Right. Sarah, if you're still there, give us a shout. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can always place something in the chat. And of course, similarly, if you want, you can always give me a shout afterwards as well. Drop me a message and we can always chat outside of the group. Right, so there's just a reminder of the group program. I am so excited about this group program. I think it is going to make such a big difference in a lot of people's lives, and I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. It is an absolute pleasure. Sarah, please give me a shout and let me know what it is that you implement, what you found the most helpful. What was probably the most beneficial? Were there any eye openers? That would be really great to hear. So in the group program, like I say, really excited about it, having really good results for the one-on-one clients. And of course, with the group program, we get to learn and grow from each other. We're able to be the reflection for each other. And of course, it also works out a little bit lighter on the pocket too. So I'm really looking forward to this group program, inviting people. We've already got a couple of people on the wait list, so it's going to fill up soon. It is now coming to the festive season, so lots of people quite busy, but it'd be a really great way to start off 2021 to step out of burnout and into your brilliance. Okay, so no questions. Just want to quickly say thank you so much for your time. Well done for putting you first. I hope this has been helpful for you. I love sharing all of this information. It has all been so helpful in my life. And like I say, my mission is to normalize the conversation around burnout, because so many women are suffering from burnout. And it's time we need to change that. We need to change how we deal with stress. We need to change so much. And of course, the easiest way to change is to start with yourself. So looking forward to working with some of you beautiful women and learning and hearing all about your experiences, what you've implemented out of today's masterclass, how it has benefited you, and where to from here. Thank you so much. You guys all have a beautiful, beautiful day, and we will chat soon.